Hello, my name is Elijah Wells, and today's review is Lee Isaac Chung's new movie, Twisters. The story follows Kate Carter, who's played by Daisy Edgar Jones, who's a former storm chaser after an extremely traumatic event that also the lives of a couple of her colleagues. She is essentially invited back into the field of storm chasing after Oklahoma suffers some really brutal tornadoes and is forecasted to be slammed with even more brutal tornadoes by Hyper, played by Anthony Ramos. Well, along the way, they meet up with Tyler Owens, who is this blogger and internet personality who goes into this idea of storm chasing and like shooting out flares, fireworks into tornadoes. And Kate, of course, has a plan to put chemical compounds known as sodium polyacrylate, or I can't remember how it's pronounced, but a special type of a chemical that will be launched up into the tornadoes to make it way less intense and way less violent and save more lives in the process. The original movie, directed by Jan DuPont, released back in 1996, was, of course, even though despite its mixed reviews, was a massive cultural success and a massive success in the box office. So, in the meantime, a sequel wasn't exactly in high demand, since, of course, having the writer of Michael Crichton, who is best known for Jurassic Park, and as well as other properties like Westworld, and Jurassic World, and Congo, and 13th Warrior, the demand wasn't necessarily that big, but around the early 2020s of this decade, there was already discussions of a new Twister sequel, to the point this is essentially a standalone sequel, with even with Joseph Kosinski, who is best known for legacy sequels like Tron Legacy and Top Gun Maverick, in the bowl for story credits. It seems to be that it's already going to be destined for a lot of great things, even though another bit of a bizarre concern I have about this sequel is that Bill Paxton's dead, don't know what Helen Hunt's up to, Philip Seymour Hoffman of the original cast is also dead, and Todd Field, who you may know as a film director who made films like In the Bedroom, Little Children, and Tar, who makes films in around every 15, 20, or probably 10 years. So a reunion of the cast of the original film was not going to happen, since I've, again, no idea what Helen Hunt's up to, and Todd Field is mostly content as being a film director who directs films like every way too spread apart. The characters in this movie are certainly a very varied and definitely an interesting bunch in my opinion. Like we have Kate Carter, like I said earlier, played by Daisy Edgar Jones, as a deeply traumatized meteorologist and a former storm chaser who's pretty much reluctantly had to go back into the fold of storm chasing, even though she is extremely reluctant. But her character development, particularly her strained relationship with her mother, and how she pretty much cooperates with her co-workers, and how she's now a city girl that's now readapting to the rural state of Oklahoma, and how that juxtaposition is pretty much almost a little bit unnerving for her a little bit, and particularly how she is also familiar to the environment as well. And we also have Tyler Owens as this vlogger and this internet personality and a really eccentric person who has a massive crew of like film people and even a journalist that came all the way out from London just to cover his story, which is again shows how much of a big deal in this world storm chasing is. It's almost like a somewhat like a big vlogging business on its own. Like he did say he recently hit like 1 million subscribers off on YouTube. That would that being a big deal, of course. Like, of course he does have like a lot of chemistry between Kate and himself, which is also really good. And also Glenn Powell is also absolutely huge at the moment. Like he's also in Top Gun Maverick. He's also had a hit Netflix film, Hitman. And there's also the hugely successful rom-com movie, Anyone But You, which did really good numbers for a rom-com movie in this time of economy. And there's also Anthony Ramos as Javier, who's the former colleague of Kate, who sets up his own business to essentially track the tornadoes, essentially making a 3D mapping of the tornadoes, and just to tell the locals how big and serious the tornado is, and so they could evacuate more efficiently and register the threat more seriously. And Lee Isaac Chung, the film's director, who previously directed Minari, and even though Minari was his previous movie released back in 2020, it does go to show that he is going to be a pretty big deal here on out at this point. Even though he directed a small, intimate movie about Korean Americans trying to make a living in the south of the USA, and there's prospects of the American dream, and how he transformed himself into a big blockbuster director from a person who made a film that won an Oscar and had a budget of maybe less than 10 million to something like over $150 million in the box office, and had a massive backing from Universal, Amblin, and Warner Brothers, really big studios who are on this movie, as his previous film had A24 on it. Even though it does show that he's already making unbelievable progress in his directorial career, if we look at both his budget as well, and the movie as well being incredible in my opinion. Even though the movie does depict the really ever-present threat of not just the tornadoes, but also how it has this incredible yet horrifying ripple effect it has on the local communities, as we do see entire communities literally get completely obliterated off the map just from these massive vortex of wind just sucking and throwing everything that moves in its way. There's incredibly intense subjects like profiteering of tragedy, Javier gets called out on it when he met with a local investor, and the investor turned out to be buying a lot of land and has a history of buying off people using the excuse of a natural disaster, let's say a tornado, which again which does go to show the politics and the major grey areas of being a massive investor, and how you're going to have to be a startup company, and how much sacrifices you are willing to make, and how ugly it can get, in my opinion. Which again, it does, even though it doesn't go and again, the ever-present threats of a tornado is completely at full force, particularly in two scenes. The first one, in my three scenes, where the opening scene where Kate and her gang pretty much have to hide under a bridge, and one by one, except from Kate, gets sucked up into a tornado, with Harvey just surviving only to find out about it, only for Kate to find out about it 5 years later when she's working in New York, and seeing a tornado start small and small, then go up to a category 5, this is beyond Kate's control, and she tries to salvage it until she has this pressing guilt about having a botched mission under her hands. And there's the second one where it happens in a rodeo stadium and a nearby motel hotel, which again it shows how really daunting and really unprecedented and almost out of the blue these type tornadoes would happen, and how they could completely obliterate local businesses. A lot of people would obviously be working in these rodeo places and probably in a motel. Like I said, Mother Nature really does not care when she's having a full-blown tantrum. And particularly in the third act, when the tornado is definitely at its most gigantic, or the most threatening, and the most intimidating, and the most imposing, it's particularly when it goes into a small Oklahoma town and literally destroys anything and everything it goes into its path. When all the town residents had to go into an old-timey cinema where they're showing Frankenstein, essentially as a nod to the original movie, where there was a drive-in cinema that was showing The Shining, again as a really clever nod to the films that came before it, which I found really intriguing. And I think when the cars are really going, and particularly in that scene where Kate is driving the wagon right into the edge of a vortex without essentially getting sucked into the tornado, reminds me a lot of Mad Max Fury Road, particularly that famous scene where they drive into a sandstorm and there was that one car that gets sucked into the tornado and just explodes, and just a whole rain of fire just bounces off and just almost crashes into Maxwell Katansky, which definitely reminds me a lot about that. And a major, and of course an honourable mention to the cinematography, particularly done by Dan Mindell, who you may know for his collaborations with J.J. Abrams, starting from Mission Impossible 3, then to his most recent film being Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Even though he doesn't seem to get a lot of attention for his cinematography outside of his works on Star Wars, being Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker, he's also done some other films like Zoolander #2 and Pacific Rim Uprising and Cloverfield Paradox, which, although neither of these three films got particularly well liked by critics, and it does show that he does seem to show really brightly, despite of the critical lashing the film has got, particularly him attached to it. And particularly with Kodak throwing their weight behind him, particularly when it was announced that Lee Isaac Chung is also shooting the movie on film, which Kodak has also made a little video about, which was also really interesting. And I'm not sure if Minari, his previous film, was also shot on film, but it does go to show that he is also really flexing his massive muscles and his cinematography, even though he does show a little bit with the Force Awakens, which does have some beautiful cinematography shots here and there, but at this point this is probably his strongest suit in my opinion, that he's definitely going to rise up into the game, and probably, who knows, to be the next Emmanuel Lubezki or the next Craig Fraser. Like, he could, the cinematography in this movie is definitely a really strong highlight in my opinion. Twisters is also not just a love letter to the 90s disaster films that were massive during the 90s blockbuster scene, but it was also a major showcase of Lee Isaac Chung as a blockbuster director, and also Glenn Powell as an action film star, and also Daisy Edgar Jones as a lead actress, and as well as Anthony Ramos as a rising star, and also some really gorgeous cinematography, like I just mentioned, some really great music that particularly go into more country route, given the film setting, of course, like the song There's No Love in Oklahoma by Luke Combs, I think it was, who, like country music, is absolutely huge right now, like Morgan Wallen and Chris Stapleton as well, which I don't want to get into that avenue right now, in my opinion, but the movie visually is absolutely marvellous to look at. Even in the more intimate scenes where Kate and Owen are in the gas station just chatting about their strategy, or something a bit more, way more strength and a lot more power behind it, and a lot more visual imagery, like a tornado scene, and a lot more CGI thrown into it. Like, it does show, again, pretty great to its strength, even though I wish it does go into the more of its subplots a little bit more, like business investments, like the dark side of that, and how Kate's relationship with her mum was severely strained, and how she coped with that trauma by herself, and how other people may have reached out to her. But in my opinion, Twisters is definitely a majorly worthy sequel to an alright movie that came out in the mid-90s, even though it doesn't rely on cameos or the original stars as that matter, but it does have the heart of the original, and does have the thrill and the excitement of the original, and does have a lot more of an adrenaline, and it just feels like a much more muscular version of the original. So, for Twisters, I am feeling an 8 out of 10. So, what do you think of Twisters? Let me know in the comments, like this video, subscribe to my channel, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd, and this is Elijah Wells, and bye!